Hello, welcome to Co-Design Work with Wonder. I'm June Beha, CEO of BayhaGroup, and this is my weekly live stream show. We are live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and I wanted to share with you our evolving mission statement. So at BayhaGroup, we promote workplace intelligence opportunities co-designed by youth for youth, inspiring them to be the hero in their own stories. So what that means is we have been doing virtual internships, and we have co-designer interns who are high school students as well as college students, and they're helping us to plan for what we're going to be doing this summer, which is hosting over 250 young people virtually in a paid work experience. And we're going to be focusing on workplace intelligence. And much of what we do is grant funded. So our topic today is about grant getting, and it's going to be focused on the new administration and priorities. And I'm so excited to bring my guest, my colleague in many, many different collaborations, Kelly Cooper, to join me, because we're going to be talking about what some priorities are in the new administration and just some of the forecasting that we've been doing. So I'm going to bring Kelly. Hi, Kelly. Welcome.
Hi, June. Thank you.
Nice to see you. So this is some of our favorite topic. We love talking about grant getting. And with the new administration, there are some priorities. And we've identified 5 priorities that I will share with everyone. And then we'll get through sort of why, where did this come from? So one we've identified is technology. I'll do it. I have co-designer intern who's helping me, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. So technology is one, and another priority is education, which is near and dear to us. Another priority that's been identified is infrastructure. So it's a big deal given what's happening around the country, infrastructure, so it makes sense. Another one is about regulation. So what's happening with banking, environment. And then the 5th one we've identified is about climate and water, clean energy. So I'm going to start with my first question to you, Kelly, is, so why, where did this come from, right? What made you identify the conversations we've had and sort of the steps on why and how did these top priorities get identified?
Well, the first thing I want to start with, June, is that these are priorities that have been around for a while in different phases and different formats. And we could say that the Obama administration, the Trump administration, and now the Biden administration are all concerned with the fiscal and economic health of the nation. And the way that different administrations propose to address may change, but this 5 list did not just kind of pop up within the last few weeks. And the reason I mention that is because it's important to understand that there are a lot of bipartisan issues. And the idea of identifying bipartisan issues helps us to consider what the priorities are going to be. These priorities have been identified in varying formats in the past. These priorities are in the business news. They are also in the original stimulus proposal. I will say that the original stimulus proposal of the Biden administration is more linked to securing funds for individuals and securing funds for non-stimulus related projects. However, there has been a lot of talk, and what we do is take a look at the patterns in these discussions from various business writers and from people who are working in the business space, either as researchers or as entrepreneurs. I don't know for sure what the order of these priorities are going to be, but it doesn't matter for our context. And I think what's important is to identify what we believe are going to be the priorities, and then to identify how, when, and where they're a fit for the values and for the priorities of the organizations that we serve.
Yeah, so once they're identified, it's like, well, now what with regard to grant getting? So what would you say would be some things to consider? So for us in the world of education, what would we say to our audience who's watching, what to do next?
The first that I noted was the technology, the internet access and cybersecurity and cyber. The priority idea that I have in this regard for educators is to understand that in the past we have had IT departments and we've had operations, we've had compliance, we have student services, we have the instruction side of the house, we have all of these different areas. And at the end of COVID, what we're seeing is that technology is not separate from operations. Technology is a part of the stack of everything that we do. And when we are serving students, when we are looking at food scarcity and food stability, when we're looking at fiscal issues, in all cases, they involve technology. When we look at technology, then in the case of grants, it can't be because we want to bring on new technology. That might be an element of it. But it would also be to address all of the operational issues that we've struggled with, because technology and operations, in my opinion, will be married from now on. We've really taken a leap, as you all know, in our reliance on technology for those things that we thought were simple in the past. We know that we need to be efficient, and we know that we need to reach out and build community and bring our students back into the fold in education, and it's going to take technology for that to happen. The reason it's going to take technology for that to happen is both because we don't know if everyone's going to be kind of always in person, but also we need to support our teachers and our schools so that they can spend time helping, supporting, and encouraging students. And we are not going to be able to go back to even more faculty than we had before. The schools are already struggling. And so technology, please don't think of it as something separate. We need to think of it as something that's woven through everything that we do. The next item that we talked about was education. And it's also important to think about education differently. I'm going to take my glasses off because I think I'm blinding all of us. I won't be able to see. You'll have to cue me up there, June. I've tried new glasses. I've tried everything. I'm obviously better at education than I am at camera work. So in education is the big E, right? It's not the small e. So everything that we talk about in all of these priorities, we're going to have to create and enhance talent and build a workforce for that. But there are other things included in education as well. And this, and in the past administration, immigration was a big component of education in helping immigrants to transition through citizenship programs. And so immigration to citizenship falls within education, as does the talent that we need for taking a look at the other priorities. Infrastructure is probably the largest of the priorities. And we have so many issues that we've not dealt with for a long time. There's a lot of issues between states and cooperation. There are major issues. A quick example is water. In city of San Francisco, as an example, a 100-year-old water infrastructure is leaking more water than it is delivering. We have issues in California with the aqueduct. We have issues with all of these different areas within the infrastructure. So if we could all sit down and name roads we think that should be different, or buildings or schools or safety or housing, whether that be housing for the homeless or housing improvements, in all of those areas, it's people, right? People are going to have to be the builders, the creators, the advocates, the community leaders, the teachers. And so really for infrastructure, we really are talking about education, right? We're talking about how it is that we could use rapid upskilling and reskilling in order to build the infrastructure that we'll have the opportunity to build. I think that major projects are going to be a little bit by the by, and the money will be decentralized out to the states. And then the states will want to work on local projects that serve their community better and differently. And that also addresses some of the ideas that the Biden administration has been talking about at the community level. The next thing that we talked about, which I have to put my glasses on. Climate. Okay.
No, wait, increase regulation and then climate.
Okay, thank you. Well, for increased regulation, that's not a bad word. We tend to think of the Democratic Party as liking regulation, but in today's world, regulation also means standardization, and it also means compliance. And there are a lot of things that we're doing with our electric grid, with utilities, with gas and electric, with the infrastructure, with climate, with all of these different areas where, we can't have any one vendor kind of take off and run with everything. We need to be able to build standards so that we know, for example, that broadband access across the state is reasonable. It's not currently. The rural areas suffer with bandwidth in contrast to the urban areas. And so there's going to be a lot of work there. And my statement is, again, that goes to how do we do that? How do we figure out to do that? And how do we train everybody in order to do that? And it's kind of the same with climate. We have a lot of issues in California with fire. We have a lot of issues with across the state, as we're seeing now, and also across the nation with what's happening with climate change. And the idea from a grant perspective is not to tout whether you agree or disagree, but where is it in your community that you can take direct action? And those are, I think, we can identify as safe priorities. And certainly for the purpose of this conversation regarding grants, this is a wealth of opportunity for us to identify funding and to identify, how that is or isn't a match, and how it is that we can go about securing some of that funding.
Right, because there are so many opportunities. And so my next question would be, so what might be the next steps to track the priorities for grant getting?
One of the things that I like to do is work in grants.gov, and I actually have it set on my phone. They have a great app for when you're sitting waiting for someone to take a look at and just kind of peruse through. But what I like about grants.gov is that you're able to set up like a search parameter. And what I do, for example, is I work primarily in education, and then I also volunteer for a nonprofit organization that works with digital identity and privacy and birth attestation in refugee camps. And so what I do then is I go into grants.gov. It's too much. It's overwhelming to take a look at all of it. And so I go in and set up these search to manage. So I have one set up for digital identity. I have one set up for the Sovereign Foundation. I have one set up for refugees for the Sovereign Foundation. I have one set up with apprenticeships for Work Wonder. I have one set up for rapid upskilling and reskilling for a project that I'm working on with West Hills College or Community College District. And so this way I'm able to get reports on about 200 at a time instead of 2,000 at a time. And then from there, I narrow it down as well, depending upon the type of organization. But the most important thing that I take a look at is those grants that have not yet come out, and those organizations that are lobbying for legislation and funding in certain areas. Because it's okay to occasionally see a grant that you need to have done in 3 weeks, but it's not really a good strategic plan to do so. And the reason is that you'll just be constantly chasing the chicken around the yard, right? Instead, what's important is to be able to identify the priorities for your organization, where it is that you want to be in 3 years, how it is that you want to serve your constituents, and then start really having conversations to get everybody on the team on board. And then when a grant falls, then you're in a position immediately to do something about that. And the reason that I think that that's important now is because the Biden administration has stated that they want to do quite a plethora of action items in the first 100 days. And I'm not going to be surprised if we see some grants drop with some short timelines, and I want to be ready, really ready for those.
Exactly. And it's some stuff that we've talked about, which is grants.gov. So I've put that on. And then I know in the past there was forecasting that they actually did show. So I don't know. I used to get these updates for these are the types of grants, and this is what the departments, the various federal departments were anticipating they would be funding for the year. So to get on different lists for the
Mhm.
various departments might be ways. So with the forecasts, it's also just identifying which departments in the federal government are giving different kinds of funding. So even just tracking what has been given in the past might be something with regard to tracking. And then we have this is something that so we talk a lot about this, and it might be fun for folks to just know more about why you and I are so passionate about grants and what sort of lights us up about why. So for you, Kelly, why is it?
Okay, so when I think about grants, people ask me, are you nuts? I mean, why is it that you like to work on grants? I really don't, right? I mean, writing a grant is, one part excitement and like, I don't know, 99 parts drudgery, right? It's not that it's so fun, but here's what I think. I try to live my life for a purpose. And I try to identify 2 or 3 priorities in the same way that I'm asking organizations to identify 2 or 3 priorities. And in the realm of what I consider to be my personal priorities, I would never, in the lifestyle that I have chosen as a mom and as a grandma and living in a rural community that I love, I would never be in a position to say, I love your project and here's $2 million, right? But oh my gosh, actually I am in that position, right? And so one of the projects that I mentioned that I'm working on, I'll mention a couple, but one of the projects is a great nonprofit called Irespond. And I'm working with the Sovereign Foundation. It's a great group of people. And right now they have a pilot in a refugee camp in Thailand. And they're working on birth attestation. And what that means is when an infant is born, they are able to record that birth and record who the parents are and record when that person was born and record if that person went to school, if they were in a camp for a long time, if they received a TB test, right? We take that for granted, but without an identity, that child has really a life of struggle, right? And so what can I do? I mean, I can send them 10% of my income, or I can go to Thailand and bring supplies once or twice. I can do all of these things. But honest to goodness, if I sit at my desk at home and really focus and think and, pray and all of these things, there's just a heck of a good chance that I can get them a lot of money to do important work. And it's the same in our schools. When you are in a school and you see that they're doing something innovative and interesting and exciting, and it involves equipment, it involves an interesting career pathway, it involves traveling to universities, the government isn't paying for any of that, right? There's a set amount of money through daily attendance, ADA, that the schools get, and it's the same at the college level through attendance, and it's a formula. It's probably really exciting stuff for y'all, but there is something to be said for all of the great things that our schools do, all of the great things that our teachers do. But the cool stuff, the innovative stuff, the stuff that helps students to transition into the workforce, the stuff that helps them get into the top tier universities, all of those things, all schools in the US really struggle to provide. And so when I'm 99 years old and I'm looking back, I mean, I might have taught thousands of kids in a classroom, but it's probably going to be the projects that I was able to raise funds for that will have made the biggest contribution. That was kind of a long answer, wasn't it, June? I'm
It's
squinting.
awesome. It's
You're still there, right?
well, it is. It's funny because I always feel like grants feel like writing a thesis or writing a dissertation because it's always top of mind. I can't escape. When I'm in the middle of writing a grant, it is always with me. And so it's gotten to the point where in my career, I want to choose wisely where I spend my time. And so the passion projects are really the places where I want to devote my energy. And it's been amazing to have different partners, school districts that I have really built relationship with and who are doing amazing work with young people, have really that spirit of being student centered and having it be more project focused. And so I'm excited to see them get a lot of funding to make those things happen. And it is extremely rewarding to be a part of it, to be part of the team that helps with doing all of the gory details in getting the grants. And so for me, I totally light up. There's a part where it's great for my personality because I love deadlines. I weirdly like filling out forms because I know how to do it. It's easy. And then I like the satisfaction that there's a deadline. It's 5 o'clock at this time. And if you don't get it in, you don't get considered. And it's great for that sense of accomplishment because when you get it in, it's in. And then it usually takes several months, so then I don't have to think about it. And then it's the best feeling when you get it, when you find out.
I won. Yeah.
It's like the lottery, but not, right? Because you actually had to work for it. And so it's really gratifying. It's even more gratifying to then be part of implementing what was written. And so I feel like that's where we're at right now is we get the fruits of the labor.
Yeah. I do want to say, though, that I think that the grants that are going to be upcoming are going to be different. And if you're thinking about writing a grant, you can't think about more of the same. And you can't think about getting us, quote, back on track or, quote, back to normal, because that's not where the money's going to be. I think everybody knows at this time that the future is going to be different. There are going to be elements, of course, that we always bring forward. Those things that succeeded will still succeed. They might look a little bit different, but they'll still be strong, right? However, that's not going to get you money. So I think we need to talk a little bit about that. We're passionate about grants and how it is that we implement that passion, if you will. And what's critical to know is that it's a new day. And, you know, I always go back to the pizza and beer analogy. If we were together having a pizza and beer talking about what are some unbelievable things that we can do to promote learning, engagement, livable wage jobs, workplace intelligence, refugees, all of those things. If we could sit down and have a pizza and laugh a lot and make notes and come up with what we think would just be a game changer for youth, a game changer for schools, a game changer for immigrants, any of those areas, a game changer for identity, then that's what people want to see in a grant, right? And so don't think about, oh, this sounds really good. I'm going to write a grant because we really need to kind of get things going again. That's not the type of grant that we're talking about. There are CARES funding opportunities that FIPSI is running to bring students back. And that's a part of the 1.9 package that President Biden is talking about. But what we're talking about, the type of grants that we're talking about is, I would categorize them as, quote, if only. You know, if only we could invent this, if only we could start this, if only we could expand that, if only industry partnered with us on this and that. That stuff's low-hanging fruit. You can get money for that, right? And the new administration and the new funding means new thinking about grants, new thinking about delivering education and learning, new approaches to climate change, new infrastructure to repair, new processes, new policies, new standards, new ways of doing business. And what's interesting to me is that we could all give restaurants some advice. We could all give movie theaters some advice. We could all give all the companies that Amazon's putting out of business advice. We could say, try this, try that. But for some reason, in our sector, in education, we're afraid to let go. And if you want funding, you're going to need to, right? Another thing that comes up is schools feel so overwhelmed right now, right? And they can't possibly take on anything new. However, grant funding is new. Grant funding is the future. And although it seems almost overwhelming right now, the funds are not going to come in until you've returned. Most likely the funds would come in if you are applying for something right now, more at the end of the calendar year, maybe into the next academic year, et cetera. And you can, have a lot of sway in how it is that you want to bring that on. But, you cannot get to the other side of this and just say, this happened to us, right?
Right.
2020 cannot bring you down, right? Your obligation in education is to help students find and secure a future, and your obligation as educators is to help your schools find that same future that they can provide for the students. And we could say the same for all of the different areas of grants. So I can tell I'm getting a little preachy, maybe because I can't see, but I think that it's super important to note that, yeah, we have a good time with this. We have a good time with funding and things like that. But we're kind of wild and crazy, right? I mean, June says, well, let's just pay 300 youth, right? Oh, okay, yeah, that's different. Let's do it. And we can make that work. But if June were to say, I want to get all of those $200 textbooks and a new Scantron machine so that when students come back, the classrooms are clean and we can really do education, the traditional way, no chance, right? No chance.
No, and that's not where our heart is. It's not what gets us excited. And so definitely the spirit is to be innovative. I think of it as, I love being an entrepreneur, and I love the idea of grant money as seed money. It's seed money for new ideas, innovation, to really try things that haven't been tried before. And I feel like that's where we have been successful in our grants, is to really offer different ideas. So with that, I am going to let you know that Kelly and I are going to be back in a month. Our next grant getting segment is going to be focused on something that is a nitty-gritty of writing the grant proposal, which is, you found a grant proposal, and our first approach is to start with the budget and work plan. So Kelly and I are going to be back on Thursday, March 18th. So please join us at 3 p.m. that Thursday. And for our show next week, we're going to focus on a deep dive with Barbarella Focus. She and her production company, Salt and Sugar, hosted a group of interns last summer. They're going to be hosting another group of interns in a deep dive this summer, focused on documentary filmmaking. So everybody was working remotely. She's going to talk about how to create high quality documentary shorts with never meeting anyone in person. And so please stay tuned for that. And so, yeah, Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always so fun to see you and for us to talk about something we're so excited about, which is grant getting.
I just want to say too, in closing, June, for anyone who's watching or thinking about writing a grant, it's not magic, right? It's just excitement. It's a vision for a new project, and then taking the time to go through this dull, standardized process and telling your story and knowing that, wow, thousands, hundreds, or deep experiences are going to take place. And so when you're writing, your voice is of this passion for the project and the possibility that project will create to serve others. And that really will tide you over through the kind of the nuances and the forms and things like that. You'll get to a point where those things don't even matter. I'm a parent, and there are some delightful things about parenting, and there are some not quite so delightful, pretty much gross things, especially in early parenting, if you catch my drift. But still, there's no better feeling than supporting people and a community that you care for. And grants are a way that you can potentially make a significant, lasting contribution and change the world. It's great.
It really is. I know. And it's so fun to talk with you about grants. So, all right.
Thank you, June.
With that, thank you. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next week.